We're Malin and Johan, a Swedish couple that have been sailing full-time since 2016. After 3.5 years of sailing, we welcomed our daughter Vera on board. In 2022, we moved into Sunhill Farm and started building our next boat from scratch. We're a bit over a year into the build now, and we are doing the last jobs on the hull before it's time to turn it over. It's been 4 very tough weeks of sanding and fairing the topsides of the hull, but it's finally coming to an end. We've been lucky with some sunny weekends lately, and we've been taking the opportunity to fix in the garden. Today we had decided to finish mounting the chestnut paling. Vera did some gardening, and so did I.
Det skakar jätte...
Men tror du inte att det var vinden bara?
Nej, det skakar.
Jag ser ingen spindel här. Jag ser bara det här gamla gräset.
Men det skakar.
Det var nog vinden, tror jag.
The gate was done, and now we just had to connect the ends of the paling. The afternoon turned into spring, with sunshine and very little wind.
Oh my God!
Det har varit så kallt i natt. So it's Monday and we have a new week ahead of us with a lot of boat work, and the plan for today is to get as much fairing as possible onto the bottom of the hull. If I'm lucky, I will manage to do the whole bottom today with the first layer. That would have been great, but we'll see.
While Johan was in the barn, I was outside starting a new little project, making frames for the no-dig beds. I was about to go and buy new timber, but as I stood next to the car, I saw the old timber that we took down when we opened up the barn, and that was going to be perfect to make frames out of. The timber is old, but it will do. I scraped off mold and removed the old nails. I wanted the unpainted side facing out, and by keeping the painted side towards the soil, it will help the wood to keep moisture away. The red paint is called Falu red paint, and it's a natural paint which makes the timber breathe. When they're all done, I will apply raw cold-pressed linseed oil on both sides for more protection.
So it's almost 8 o'clock now in the evening, so pretty late. The progress has been a lot slower than I first thought. And that's partially because it's pretty cold today. It's only around 5 Celsius. And that makes the fairing pretty thick and hard to spread out quickly. I have done the whole front now. So I have reached the keel pocket on this side. So I have the length of the keel pocket left on the starboard side of the hull now. So I figure maybe I can get that done in another, 2 or 3 hours, something like that. It will be a long evening, but I figure it's best to just get this done now, because since it's pretty cold, I won't be able to sand on this tomorrow. So I think it's best to just get the whole hull done, and then we can start sanding on it the day after tomorrow.
The beds were longer than I had measured originally, so I cut some planks too short, but I fixed that. But I hadn't realized that I had also turned one plank wrong with the bare side facing in, which I didn't see until now when I was editing.
Yeah, yesterday was a really long day, but I managed to get fairing on the whole bottom section, so that's really nice. And like I said yesterday, it's been pretty cold now. This last night it was down to around 2 Celsius. I've been using the fast hardener, but even with that, it takes quite some time when it's this cold to get it to fully cure, and it's still pretty soft. So I'm thinking I will use that to my advantage and just add more fairing in those places where I can see that that's needed already now before this has cured. And then I can ramp up the temp in here by starting some heaters and let them run for the rest of this day. So this is gets fully cured until tomorrow, so we can start sanding by then. So it's Wednesday and the fairing has finally cured enough so I can start sanding. So the plan for today is to use the random orbital sander to just break the surface of the epoxy to make it easier to use the longboard. It will be interesting to see how hard it will be to sand the epoxy, since I've used a little bit less filler in it now because we don't have any more, so I had to thin it out a little bit so we could get one full layer on the bottom of the hull. I have ordered more filler, but it will not be here until day after tomorrow, I think. Another 7 kilos, and I hope that will be enough to finish the hull. So far we have used 15 kilos of those micro balloon, that type of filler, 406 from West System. And yeah, you can imagine we've been using 15 kilos of filler so far, and that means that we probably have used, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere 40 to 50 kilos of epoxy just to get the top sides fair. So quite a lot. And I have emptied the vacuum cleaner twice with only that epoxy powder inside of it. And those 2 bags together, probably 15 to 20 kilos of epoxy dust that I have sanded off the hull that have fallen down to the floor. So there is quite some waste doing this, but I don't see any other way to get the hull perfectly fair. Yeah, it is pretty hard, the fairing. There's definitely a difference with less filler, but it's still okay. And once you get through that first layer, the shininess, it gets easier. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but the hull is falling down pretty steep. So you're working like uphill. It's pretty hard on your knees. Even if you have knee pads, and it's the same when you're using the longboard, you're pushing yourself, and it's hard to stay put when you're putting force on that longboard. But it gets easier once you're up in this area and moving forward in the hull. It's more level up here.
I'm quite pleased with how the frames turned out for the garden beds, and especially that I could reuse this wood that used to sit on the barn. They're not perfect, they're not the most stable frames, and we'll see how long they last, hopefully a few years. So I just finished those 2 smaller ones behind me, and those are for the sunflowers. Since they are so high, they will be in the back, and then we'll have a little seating area in the middle. And behind these 6 beds that are on the ground, I will build 2 taller beds that are around this high, but we didn't have any more wood for that, so yeah, I have to buy some anyway. Or maybe we can use some of our stash inside the stable. So what's left to do here in the kitchen garden now is to lay out more of the cloth and cover that with the wood chips and prepare the beds. I will lay out some old branches and leaves in the bottom, and then put the manure on top, and we'll see if the manure will or compost will last for all of these. I don't think, but our neighbors had more, they said. I'm looking forward to spend a lot of time in here this summer, and I hope there won't be too much snails. I've already seen quite many actually, these tiny ones. So next up on the DIY list of things we want to build here for the farm or the garden is to make a playground for Vera. And we don't want to make just like a standard playground with swings. We want to build a type of pergola and incorporate swings in there, but also to be able to hang up a hammock. And we will have a slide and a climbing wall. I set that design already last year, but time wasn't on our side then. But I've said now we have to do this. So this is the next, we're not going to do any other building project here in the garden before we finish that. And it will be out here when we have this big open grass field. I don't want to have a lot of grass fields here. I want to have flowers for pollinators, bring the insects here, and just create different rooms within the garden. So that will be exciting.
So today will be another day of sanding the hull with the random orbital sander mixed in with a little bit of longboarding. The problem I had yesterday was that the fairing, it was cured but still a little bit on the soft side, so it clogged the paper. So the progress was kind of slow, but hopefully that has cured now even more, so it's harder today, and yeah, hopefully that will make the progress faster. So, to not bore you guys with more sanding today, I thought I should bring you guys up to speed on the steps that are left before we can flip the whole hull over. And there's 4 or 5 or 6 steps. So once we're finished with the fairing and the sanding, it's time to apply a base coat or a barrier coat on the whole hull. And the reason we're doing this is because the fairing or the filler that we have used in the fairing is not ideal to have under the waterline. And to make the hull even more waterproof, we're going to use a barrier coat mixed with epoxy and put on a few layers of that, probably 4 layers under the waterline and 2 or 3 layers on the top sides, just to protect the hull even more. So the third step will be to create a template of the keel pocket here. And obviously before we do that, this area will also be sanded and faired and everything. And the reason we want to have a template is just to make sure that we're not building a keel with the keel plate that doesn't fit this, this pocket, because that would have been a big problem once we want to mate the hull together with the keel plate and if they don't match. So I'm thinking if we build just a template of this, the correct thickness and the correct bend and shape and everything, and we can bring that to the mechanical shop so that they know that this is what they are going to create. I mean, we have this as a computer file, but it's always nice to have something from reality as well. So I'm thinking I will do that from just a sandwich laminate and with some vacuum to press it down so we can keep the shape here. So step number 4 is to build 2 cradle boxes. We will have one back here in the stern of the boat and one just in front of the keel recess. The idea we have is that these boxes will let the midsection of the hull just a few centimeters above the floor, so we can utilize all the ceiling height that we have in here, because once we have that deck house on the boat, there will not be a lot of room above the boat, so we need the hull to sit really low in here in the barn. And obviously these boxes needs to be pretty sturdy, since the boat is going to be a lot heavier once it's time to permanently remove the boat from the barn when it's finished. Probably it's going to weigh somewhere 11 to 12 tons maybe when it's time to bring it out of here. So these boxes needs to be able to cope with that. So I'm thinking we're going to build them out of plywood and use some fiberglass and also some steel plates in the bottom section of these boxes, so we can use machine skates when it's time to bring the boat out of here in a few years. And these boxes, they bring me to step number 5, that kind of ties together with the cradle boxes. But let's talk about that inside the hull. Step number 5 is kind of a precaution we're taking, because right now we're not sure if we're going to lift the whole hull once it's time to turn it over, or if we're going to roll it around. But either way, we're thinking that it would be nice to have like a roll cage, like a cage around the whole hull, just to protect the hull a bit more. We will have 2 or 3 of them. I'm thinking 2 will be enough if we build them really sturdy, but maybe we will add a third one. And the idea behind them is that it will be like a square wheel where the whole hull sits in the middle of that. And then we can lift one side of the hull over, and we will have a big radius on the corners of this square wheel. So we do the whole flip in 2 steps. First we lift the hull up on its side, and then we probably have to move the whole hull sideways to have enough room on that pad that we have outside. So we're probably going to use pipes for that, so we can move the whole hull sideways a couple of meters, and then we're going to flip it again so it comes right side up. And why I said that step number 5 kind of ties together with the cradle boxes is because we're thinking that this roll cage will be tied in together with the cradle boxes from the start. So we will place the cradle boxes up on top of the hull before it's turned over, so they will be already in place once we have the hull flipped over, so we can set the hull down directly on those boxes. There's of course many ways you can do a flip like this, but we're thinking that we want to be able to control most of the process ourselves and not be in a rush. But even if we decide to use a crane, the crane can also utilize those square wheels and as a lifting point on the side. So we roll it, but together with the crane. And there's actually one more step, step number 6, I almost forgot. And that is to put some wheels on the strongback so we can get the boat out of here when it's time to flip it over. And that involves a lot of details, of course. Where are we going to put those wheels? What type of wheels? And how are we going to pull the boat out? And how are we at the same time going to hold it back so it just doesn't roll straight into the small forest down there. So as you can hear, there's tons of different small things that needs to be in place before the hull is turned over and inside here in the barn again. So that's it for this week. Thanks a lot for watching, and a big thank you to all of you guys who support our production in different ways. And if you want to support our videos, you can do that by becoming a patron. And by becoming a patron, you can get in direct contact with us if you have any suggestions for future videos or any questions or something like that. So have a nice weekend, and we hope to see you next Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.